A literary movement began in England in the second half of the 19th century. Its mass popularity was part of the larger neo-Gothic movement happening at that time. These books spoke of ghostly apparitions, communications with the dead, and other manifestations of the spirit world. This time period and these literary works were steeped in the melancholy of the past, but soon this peaceful state of sadness was disturbed by a noisy phenomenon from the other side. Poltergeists, the knocking spirits. Louis was awakened by the sound of his son crying. He went into Denis' bedroom. The boy seemed to be very agitated. When he put his hand on Denis' forehead, he felt a presence nearby. He turned and saw a human-looking shape in the doorway. It was white and translucent. It seemed to have long hair, but despite this somewhat feminine trait, Louis was certain that it was a heavy-set man wearing loose clothing. Louis closed his eyes, and when he reopened them, the apparition was gone. For weeks, Louis and his wife Marie-Claude had been noticing strange things in their new mobile home, like unexplained drafts, the sound of footsteps in the hallway, and unpleasant sensations. After he saw this apparition, there was no longer any doubt in Louis' mind. Their house was haunted.
Fantômes.
Ghosts and poltergeists. Who are these strange nocturnal visitors? Messengers from the spirit world, or an outward manifestation of the fears that lie hidden within us. There is a story about a house in Athens, Greece, that was haunted a century before our time by the ghost of an old man whose hands and feet were weighted down with iron chains. According to the story, a man had died of fright when he had seen the ghost. In ancient times, people were afraid to walk on former battlefields for fear that they might run into lost souls. Ghosts and haunted sites were already well established back then.
When asked what a ghost is, it's a very difficult question because people have different definitions of what they believe a ghost is or what they think a ghost is. For most people, it is some kind of manifestation, a survival of bodily death of a human being. For others, it's interpreted as a type of a spirit. It doesn't necessarily have to belong to a person or a living creature. It can be literally an entity, good and evil, angelic or demonic.
In so-called primitive societies where ancestors are revered, it is easy to see how spectral manifestations could be interpreted as an honor, an ascent from beyond the grave for spiritual heirs. In Western society, on the other hand, spirits have long been perceived as a threat. In old Christianity, lost souls could only come from one place, hell. So by definition, they must be impure. Within certain fundamentalist groups, ghosts are still seen as diabolical entities. Today, it is generally believed that ghosts are disincarnate beings who, for many reasons, refuse to leave our world.
Des décédés, des défunts qui se manifestent au-delà de la tombe.
On a more technical note, ghostly apparitions began to be studied seriously towards the second half of the 19th century.
One could argue that when you look at the scientific study of ghosts and hauntings, that people could say that it started off with things like British courts looking into cases like the demon drummer of Tedworth back in the late 1700s. But realistically, you really start to see that happening with the formation of the Ghost Club, or the Ghost Club Society in Cambridge University in 1851. That really sort of set the tone. From there, you have the spin-off groups that really were related in one way or another, such as the Society for Psychical Research, which then begat the American Society for Psychical Research. They really set the tone for looking at things in a scientific manner and not simply accepting things strictly on faith base.
120 years of research have taught us that more than 85% of the world's population believes that ghosts exist. We also know that more than 1,000 apparitions are reported around the world each day. Of this total, only 2% prove to be beyond the scope of investigation, since practically all manifestations can be explained by natural or artificial causes. It is this 2% of unexplained cases that puzzle researchers. They have noticed that these so-called manifestations can be broken down into 3 distinct categories: ghosts, haunted houses, and poltergeists.
I distinguish between ghosts and spirits. In fact, the language gives me that phrase, ghosts and spirits. It trips off the tongue naturally. A ghost is an entity generally recognized by somebody. For instance, you see the image of your maiden aunt who died at the time. It's an apparition. You recognize her. It's a recognizable personality in non-corporeal form. It may be someone whose name you don't know, but you see a recognizable human being. So that is a basic ghost, an entity. A spirit, however, is a power, something that's nebulous. You can't quite put your finger on it. It's a shapeshifter. It's a cloud. It's a brightness, or it's a series of poltergeist-like events. So I divide them easily into ghosts and spirits. Haunted houses, or haunted castles, or haunted museums, public places are plentiful throughout the world. You think of them in terms of Scotland, perhaps, as having so many of them, but every Canadian city that has a public building that's been around for 50 years or more probably has a ghost story attached to it. And why is there a ghost story told about the halls or the back rooms of this building? It's because somebody reported something and the story built. And a journalist probably introduced a local psychic or medium or fortune teller. And the psychic medium or fortune teller began to tell stories. Well, I didn't see the lady with the red hat, but I saw the gray lady. With the result, they build up like this.